Welcome to the Catching Up with Casey show. If you are tired of chasing buy-in, frustrated with teams who can't seem to get on the same page, or over the constant struggle of holding people accountable without micromanaging, this is the show for you. I'm Casey Watts, speaker, author, and the creator of the Clarity Cycle Framework. I help leaders just like you take teams from frustration to alignment so teams can work collectively toward a common purpose in a committed way instead of against each other as though they are functioning in different organizations. And we do it all through the craft of clarity. Whether you lead from the middle or you are the front-facing leader of your organization, on this show, we bring clarity to the seemingly small things in leadership that make the biggest difference, because clarity precedes capacity. Now, with all of that said, let's dive into today's episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's episode. It is titled Wicked: How Social Media is Driving the Narrative About Teams, but I feel like I need to start with the first word of because I don't know how much the first word has to do with the episode. I'm going to filter in a couple of analogies, but let me go ahead and say, I am not the best with analogies and metaphors. I admire those who are. I have some friends who are just masters at making connections to really important concepts or simple concepts. It doesn't have to be complex. And they use some of the best analogies and metaphors. And then when I try to use them, I mix them up and combine metaphors and analogies, and it just doesn't end up making sense. But it does serve as a good laugh for anyone that I'm working with, because inevitably I still try to use analogies and metaphors when I am presenting or doing training with people. But the first word is obviously wicked. It does apply to the episode a little bit, but I want to know who out there is super pumped about the new Wicked movie coming out. I'm not going to lie, I'm not like super fan. I wouldn't consider myself that. I did enjoy the first movie. I watched it again. I will go see the second Wicked. But I'm not necessarily a super fan. So I'm just curious, is it in your plans to go see the movie? Okay, today's episode is really all about how social media is driving the narrative about teams. What I'm going to say to you is not going to be any surprise at all. It is evident in your world, no matter where you turn and look, this idea of certain things driving narratives about teams specifically and about schools specifically is prevalent. But I do want to pinpoint how exactly we might be noticing it, what the effects are, which also will not be a surprise to you or any new information. But the more important thing is, okay, how do we address it in a way that not only allows our people to commit to the bigger purpose, but is also doable, right? So we don't feel so defeated. So we're going to talk a little bit about social persuasion. So in this episode, I'm talking about two types of social persuasion that are driving narratives. We often are really familiar and think a lot about social media because it's just in our faces. But there is another type as well that I want to talk about that also will be apparent to you when I get to it. So let's talk about social media first. I am absolutely not here to bash anyone, to call out anyone. However, I will state the evidence or the facts. And that is that we know there are certain social media influencers who have a message that they are promoting, who have a platform that they are speaking on, or multiple platforms, and a large following. And these influencers, be it a singular person or like an individual or a company, like I'm trying to think of a way to put this, like the Babysitters Club. That was like a title, and you wanted to be part of the Babysitters Club, and everybody read the Babysitters Club's books. Well, now we've transitioned that to like Facebook groups, or these organizations have Facebook pages. For example, if Babysitters Club was a thing now, there would be a page that's Babysitters Club, and they would post things about, like little memes or things about the experiences that they've had with babysitting, or they would post things that other babysitters would probably find funny or they could find relatable. Well, it's the same thing right now. These influencers are posting things that they believe others find relatable or relevant. They are obviously posting things that are going to get them more likes and follows, because they've made it their job. They're entrepreneurs. They've made it their job to become well known. And content spreads because people resonate with it. I'm not saying that's a good thing that they resonate with it. Obviously, it's not. But I want to remind us that there is little we can do to control what other people put out there. These kinds of situations are going to continue. They have continued for years since the internet was available to us. They will continue for years to come, and probably even get worse. So when we notice that people are posting, sometimes it's anonymous, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's the influencers who are posting. They're posting something that they believe is relevant and will resonate with their audience and gain more followers. And then a lot of people will comment. Like if you look down in the comments, that's where it gets really defeating for leaders. And sometimes, I'm not going to lie, sometimes there are things that are posted that I agree with. Like, yeah, that's an experience I've had. That's how I feel about running down the hall to get a snack from the break room, or man, we are burned out by all of these different behaviors. It's just crazy now. So, or experiences with parents. Like there are all kinds of different things that we all can relate to. That doesn't necessarily make them negative. What becomes negative is when the comments, people start to get into the comments and they're going back and forth and back and forth. It is almost like feeding the beast, right? Like it just continues to grow and get bigger and become more prominent, more negative, toxic. People will say whatever is on their mind in the safe space behind a computer screen. And some of these comments are made by anonymous people. I'm reflecting on something that I read recently. It was a post about, there are a couple, but the one that comes to mind is a post about a specific thought leader. A specific thought leader who had created a rubric to use for very specific reasons and in very specific ways, and yet has been turned into, because of the misuse of this tool, it's been turned into a negative experience for lots of different teachers, or even leaders. I also think about memes or things that have to do with PLCs and the negative mindsets people have around PLCs. When people have a negative experience, that's all they have to anchor to. We cannot expect them to know any different if they haven't had a different experience, right? But it allows space, those comments, those media posts allow space again for people to connect with other people who have had negative experiences. And it is so frustrating for those of us who are trying to shift that narrative, for those of us who are thought leaders and creating what we feel like are really helpful tools for schools or school leaders to use, for those of us who are trying to make change happen within our schools. It is so defeating and disheartening to see all of the negativity that's being thrown out on the internet about these things we know and research says can have a significant impact on student learning, not only student learning, but your school culture. We want to create places where people want to show up, where they belong. Social media makes it really hard to do that, okay? But there's another social persuasion going on too, and that is right within the walls of your campus or within the vicinity of your district. If you have had similar experiences as me, then you know that there's one thing that is said sometimes within a meeting where admin is present, and a different that is said outside the meeting when admin is not present. Or you have experienced those meetings where a few vocal people have taken control of the conversation, and they have dragged us into a state of negativity. It's just a toxic place to be, right? You are envisioning, I'm sure, times where that has happened. It is typically a handful of people who are most vocal that we're hearing. And sometimes this feels so prevalent because they're the only voices that are heard. But it's uncomfortable for other people to be the sandpaper. So I want to think about this through the lens of, like, let's think about social persuasion through the lens of groupthink. And of course, I'm going to go to the book Wiser, Getting Beyond Groupthink to Make Groups Smarter. And they talk about some of the results of people being in these influential groups, be it social media or it's within the four walls of your campus. Here are a couple of groupthink things that people fall into. And I'm just going to read from the book because it's just so impactful. First, groups fall victim to cascade effects as group members follow the statements and actions of those who spoke or acted first, even if those statements and actions lead the group into unfortunate, terrible, or tragic directions. We can see it happening. Sometimes even the people who know it's going to lead to tragic directions will not speak up. We follow what is first said. I'm not going to get into the psychology behind that, but man, that would be a great episode. Another concept that they bring up is that groups become more polarized, ending up in more extreme positions in line with the pre-deliberation tendencies of their members. So, such as when a group of people inclined toward excessive optimism becomes still more optimistic as a result of internal discussions. The same thing could be for pessimism, right? You become more pessimistic because you are surrounded by those who are also pessimistic, and you're continuously hearing pessimistic phrases and statements. And then this is the last one I want to mention. There is another, but I'm not going to go into that one because I don't think it relates as much. But this one says groups focus on shared information, what everybody already knows, at the expense of unshared information, and thus fail to obtain the benefit of critical and perhaps troubling information that one or a few people have. Let's think about that on, like, if we're looking at social media and we have an influencer who is stating that they will not implement PLCs. Like at my school, we don't do PLCs. It's a waste of time. Well, that is based on only the information that they have. Sometimes we don't know what that information is. We don't know the history of the school. We don't know the makeup of teams. We don't know the makeup of students. We don't know the demographics. We don't know the type of school it is. We don't know the experience that the leader has had in the past. We don't know the experience of the teachers. We don't know if they do something different than PLCs that could be categorized as PLCs. So again, this is not to bash anyone or to blame anyone. We know it's going to happen, but groupthink is causing these negative cultures if we don't get ahead of it. And that's what I want to talk about today. How do we get ahead of it? I'm going to talk about this in two ways. Number one is the actual getting ahead of it. If we know, whoops, I dropped a book. If we know that this is going to happen, and we know that social media is outside of our control, really and truly, the conversations that happen outside of your meetings in your school or campus, the conversations that are happening outside of those meetings is outside of your control. The concepts or the ideas that people have when they leave, or the opinions or emotions or feelings that they're having when they leave a meeting, or at the beginning of the school year based on what you've shared at in-service. We cannot control that. That is completely outside of our control. So we have to get ahead of it in hopes that we can influence differently. The social persuasion, social media, and the toxicity of any groups or individuals on your campus, that is negative social persuasion. How can we influence differently? So I'm going to talk about a couple of things. First of all, I think if you're dealing with this mid-year and you're like, man, I'm seeing this in comments everywhere on social media. I'm not necessarily seeing our people write in the comments or engage with that because that's not my business. But I know that it's happening, and a lot of teachers are gravitating toward this idea about this initiative or this concept or this strategy that is so negative and defeating and destructive, wicked, if I will. But we know that so many people are gravitating towards that. It could be that our people are gravitating towards it too. We don't know that. But we can go ahead and get ahead of it, and we can call it out. We can call it out by saying, hey, we know that you're going to see these different things on social media. Some of them we actually believe are really funny, and you decide, obviously, how you are going to feel or think about those things. We just want to be really clear about how those may go against what it is you see us doing at this school. And we want to be sure you're really clear about why we do what we do at this school. Which leads me to the next thing. At the beginning of the school year and continuously throughout the year, we need to anchor to this phrase. At this school, we blank because blank. And that could go for many different things. I suggest for several different things, like systems you have, initiatives that you're implementing, curriculum, instructional practices you're expecting, whatever PLCs, whatever the case is. We start the beginning of the school year, the beginning of that initiative, the beginning of that curriculum implementation. At this school, we do this, and we do it because of this. And the because of this needs to have people need to have ownership of that. We need to be creating that together. At this school, we implement PLC meetings. Why do we do that? Because we believe XYZ, or we have seen the results of XYZ. At this school, we believe in class discussion. We believe in class and peer discussion because, and this is something we expect to see. Get really clear. Clarity obviously is key. Get really clear on those things and state it. Be explicit about it. And then the other thing that I want to mention about this, so we want to get ahead of it, but we can't get ahead of it and just leave it be. We have to continuously cast vision. I love the work of Andy Stanley. He has a book called Making Vision Stick. And in it, he talks about, it's a teeny tiny book. It's perfect to just have on your shelf that you can grab and remind yourself of the importance of casting vision. But a couple of things that he talks about is repeating things regularly and then celebrating systematically, because what gets celebrated gets repeated. Unless we are repeating these things regularly, it is in one ear and out the other. So if you know that you want people to have a different narrative or idea about PLCs or data meetings, then we've got to get ahead of it and think about our core values for that practice. And then we have to repeat it regularly and celebrate systematically. I talk about those two things in my book, The Craft of Clarity. If this is resonating with you, like, man, yeah, we notice how social media could cause people to go into the field of poppies right? I'm trying to make my Wicked reference. To go into the field of poppies because it looks pleasing. They're beautiful. If it's causing people, if you know social media is causing people to go into the field of poppies and you know it could be disastrous, let's talk about how you can instead not only find the yellow brick road for yourself, but pave that path for your people. We want people to commit to a bigger purpose. We want them to see themselves as part of that bigger purpose and bigger picture. And this is what I do for a living. I love this work because it is grounded in clarity. It's the whole reason I created the Clarity Cycle framework, so that you can get your people to commit to your goals, your area of focus, and so you can transfer ownership to them so that they can sustain the practices and habits. Okay. That's all I have for today. I just wanted to mention this because I'm seeing it so much. People are finally starting to go against the grain, and push back. And I wanted to push back on the idea of social media and what people are putting out without bashing. I think it's really important to me to not bash. And we have to remember too, like there are human beings behind those platforms. So, okay. Tell me your thoughts on this. Leave a comment. I think you can leave a comment on Spotify or YouTube or LinkedIn. And then if you want to start talking about how to get your people committed, maybe committed to those campus improvement plans, let's talk about how to go through the Clarity Cycle framework together. Guys, this has been great. I'll check you in the next episode. Bye. Hey, listener, I am so honored that you listened to today's episode, and I hope you gained something valuable from it. I'd also be honored if you did me 3 solid favors. First, subscribe to this show. I've got a lot of great content coming up, and I don't want you to miss any of it. Second, be sure you're following me on social media platforms. You can find me at Catch Up with Casey on LinkedIn or Instagram. And finally, if you are looking to book a dynamic and relatable speaker for your next event, conference, or retreat, I would love to bring a message about how the craft of clarity makes a significant impact on both leadership and life. Until next time, always remember, clarity precedes